Oh, I beg your pardon, Deputy Conway. You have 2 minutes.
Just to echo the sentiments of Deputy Smith, quite frankly, when I read and heard this story, I was appalled at the treatment of a young girl at the centre of this case. As people will be well aware, an unplanned pregnancy is an incredibly stressful situation for a young girl, and to be honest, the addition on then and the discourtesy that was shown to her by this school is something that she could have done without. Both the research and personal experience has told us that if young people are given every opportunity to complete their education, they go on to reach and attain their full potential and that of their child. And I just think, then, how did we arrive at a situation as outlined by Deputy Smith? How was a state-funded school allowed to impose a set of his own beliefs in a manner that could be described as blunt at best and vindictive at worst? We've heard from the Ombudsman, Emily Logan, that the spirit of the Education Act is about accessibility and access, and the principle in this case did not operate or adhere to that. That's clear. So the mother at the centre of this story has been discriminated against in a modern society in the most despicable manner. It gives me no pleasure here to stand here today and raise this issue in the Dáil, along with the media spotlight that has been cast upon this story, must be adding to the discomfort of the mother and the family at the receiving end of this scandalous statement. One has to wonder what century we're living in when the school was refused has refused to issue an apology to this young mother in question. That to me is just arrogance, and arrogance at its absolute worst. I understand that the Department of Education is to launch an inspection of the school in coming weeks, and I'd like to know when that's going to happen and how the Department are going to ensure that schools in the state are adopting and following a policy of equality in relation to admission for all students.
Deputy Riordain.
Thank you, Minister. We've come a long way in this country from the times of Anne Lovett, a girl of 15 who died in her school uniform giving birth to a child in 1981. We've come a long way since a member of my own family was refused re-entry to her secondary school 20 years ago when becoming pregnant at age 17. Irish society has moved on, but our legislation hasn't. Now, I think it's important to recognise here in this House that there are many schools up and down this country who deal with this situation every day in a compassionate manner, in a caring manner, in an understanding manner. If we reduce ourselves back to the days of Anne Lovett, we are reducing ourselves back to a situation where we isolate and where we condemn and we push teenage parents out of the education system. What I am asking you to do, Minister, is, pending the legislation that is coming, is to ask the Department to issue a circular immediately to all secondary schools to advise how to deal with this situation, because at the moment they are doing it within their own policies. They need guidance, they need a circular, and they need policy advice from the Department of Education. I recognise the Minister for Education has already preempted all this discussion by having a working group on admission policies. The legislation is pending, but in this particular case, I think what we need is a circular immediately from the Department of Education.
Here, look, I'd like to thank the deputies for raising the issue, and I'd like to firstly to reiterate my concern at the treatment of this young person, and to say that it is completely at variance to any Republican principle that we would all adhere to as Democrats, but it's also unchristian, the manner in which this person was treated. And I would like to empathise with the young student in question and agree with the issue as it is raised by the deputies. I can confirm to the House that the Department and Minister Quinn takes this matter very seriously. On foot of correspondence from the Ombudsman for Children, the Department has initiated an inspection of the school concerned, and that inspection is ongoing. The first part of the inspection involved an unannounced incidental inspection visit which took place in February 2012. A second inspection visit will be completed during this month. It is expected that the report of the inspection will be completed before the end of June 2012. In order not to prejudice the outcome of the inspector's report, I do not propose to comment any further on this specific case. That is not to fudge the issue, but in relation to enrolment generally, the current position is that every school is legally obliged to publish in such a manner as the board, with the agreement of the patron, considers appropriate, its enrolment policy. Section 29, as has been articulated, of the Education Act 98, provides parents with an appeal process where a board of management of a school or a person acting on behalf of the board refuses enrolment to a student. Where a school refuses to enrol a pupil, the school is obliged to inform parents of their right under Section 29 of the Education Act 1998 to appeal that decision to the Secretary-General of the Department of Education and Skills. And as the House will know, Minister Quinn has made the issue of reform of enrolment in schools a priority since taking office. In this regard, last June, the Minister published a discussion document on school admissions aimed at leading to changes in regulations and legislation on how primary and post-primary schools allocate places to students. Central to the question of enrolment is the need to ensure a fair and transparent system in all of our schools, which does not discriminate unfairly against students or parents. The discussion paper on a regulatory framework for school enrolment contains suggestions on how to make the process of enrolling in schools more open, equitable and consistent. Minister Quinn has made it clear that the paper was not meant to be prescriptive, nor have any decisions been made as to what elements will be contained in any final regulations or legislation. The purpose of the paper was to lead and provoke debate on enrolment policies and practices. Education partners and interested parties were invited to submit their views to the Department by the 28th of October last, and officials are coordinating the submissions received. The feedback from this consultation will help inform the nature and scope of a new regulatory framework for school enrolment, and the Minister intends to bring legislative proposals to Government this year, the primary aim of which will be to ensure that every child is treated fairly and that every child has a place at school. As to the questions that have been raised specifically by deputies, I would hope that the answer that I have given would articulate or would give voice to those, or would have responded adequately to those questions. Forgive me. In terms of the time frame for legislation, we don't have a specific time frame, and in respect of publicly or privately funded schools, I think there should be no discrimination here. That is a personal opinion as between any school in the state in relation to enrolment policy. From a constitutional point of view, I would argue that if we cherish all of the children equally, it doesn't matter where they go to school in terms of how they are treated in terms of an enrolment policy. That is a personal view, but that's something that I would certainly articulate in terms of any legislative piece, and it's something that I would have articulated to Minister Quinn.
And I welcome the Minister's response in terms of, I suppose, the unchristian nature in which this girl was treated, and I welcome the response from the department also. I just want to take, just in my response to that, just to maybe let people know that maybe this is an opportunity where the Department of Education needs to look outside of the walls of Marlborough Street in terms of influencing policy, because there are different projects and services up and down the country that have been dealing with this particular kind of situation for many years and have been doing it in a very supportive and a very positively outcome focused for girls and children. Deputy Smith mentioned the teen parent support initiatives, and also I would like to put on the record at the House the admiration that I have for a particular service in Waterford, the Waterford Student Mothers Group, that was set up over 10 years ago by a homeschool liaison teacher who saw that girls who became pregnant were not coming back to school. And their mission was simple. It was to ensure that girls completed their Leaving Cert, because all the evidence shows us that if a girl completes her Leaving Cert, her child will go on to have a more fulfilled educational experience. And so this is a particular service that's run by Bernardo's in Waterford and has been working very closely with all of the schools in the city and county for over 10 years now. And they have a 100% record in terms of all the girls completing their Leaving Cert. And so I would ask the department to look outside their walls to be influenced to ensure that best practice and policy is put in place to ensure that everybody gets equal access to education.
Again, I mean, there are fantastic models on the ground, as have been mentioned already. We visited one as an education committee only 2 months ago in Tala, run by Bernardo's, run by Francis Chance there, dealing with this issue, not just with young mothers, with student mothers, but also with student fathers, who also have their own emotions that need to be cared for. So, Minister, I would suggest, as was suggested when I visited that project, that the leadership is taking place within the communities, it's taking place within the schools, but the leadership is not there from within the department. And so while we are waiting for legislation in terms of enrolment, and that is fair enough, what we need to have, though, is a communication immediately from the department to all second-level schools to give a level of policy advice to schools how to deal with a situation where a student finds herself pregnant, or where there's a young father in the same school going through emotional turmoil as well. It is important that we take that leadership, Minister, and I suggest perhaps that you could talk to your officials and ensure that would take place.
Well, I again thank the deputies for their considered views on the issue at hand. I think, in fairness to the system, if you were to analyse the system and the fact that there are so many stakeholders, that all education stakeholders throughout the land would look with empathy at the case. You know, it's there is a sense of empathy for the girl and the manner in which she was treated. So in other words, the system, this is an aberration in the system. This is, a decision that was taken by one school, but I think the system and all of its stakeholders, by its very nature, is empathetic and deals very positively with people in all sorts of circumstances where, so, but I take the points that are made in relation to maybe a need for greater coordination at departmental level, and I think that's something that perhaps could be worked through the Education Committee of this House, and perhaps an initiative could be born out of those meetings that have taken place. So I just thank the deputies. I think I have to reiterate, though, that the Minister Quinn has already made it very clear that discrimination of this nature is unacceptable, and I think we all would agree with that position, and I want to restate that for the record of the House. Thank you.